Yeah, hi everybody. I'm here to give you a little presentation about the way of knowing called language, and it's all based upon this thing. So my first question is, what is this thing? Hopefully most of you have said this is an apple. But those of you who are a little more astute might have said this is a photograph of an apple. Or if you want to be even more technical, it's a digitally enhanced photograph of an apple. So the whole point of discussing this with you is that that's not real. That that is not really an apple. That is a representation of an apple. And this is about language because even the word apple isn't itself an apple. It's just a representation of an apple, of the thing that we call an apple. So, yeah, and also, if you are an English speaker and I ask you what is this, you would say it's an apple. If you were a Russian speaker and I said что это, you would say яблоко. If you were a German speaker and I said was ist das, you would say ein Apfel. In French you would say une pomme. In Greek you'd say ένα μήλο. Milo. Okay, and in Chinese you'd say that. I can't read that. Also Hebrew, you'd say that. So, your answer to the question, what is this, depends on what your language is. And your knowledge about what an apple is depends, to some extent, on what your language is. And we'll get into that a bit more later. Something you'll notice, or maybe not, but some of you will notice when you look at this, in English we don't have a gender we don't give normal nouns a gender. But in other languages they do. For example, in Russian, the word for apple is a neuter noun. In German, it's a masculine noun. And in French, it's a feminine noun. In Greek, it's a neuter noun. I don't think the other two languages have genders. I might be wrong there. You could correct me. But you see that just in the word an apple, or the two words an apple, there's a whole lot more information, a whole lot of, we could call it meta information or metadata, about the words that don't necessarily tell us much about an apple, but they're definitely important information to know. So language is more than just one word for one object and you put them together in a sentence. There's a whole lot of little nuances there that we have to be aware of. The other thing you'll notice when you look at this list of words is that we say an apple, ein Apfel, une pomme, and a milo. Okay, so these all have what's called an indefinite article here, right? It's the word a or an. Russian doesn't have it. I don't think it's in Hebrew. I'm pretty sure it's not in Hebrew, and I don't think it's there in Chinese. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, definitely not in Russian. We don't have a. We don't have an indefinite article. So how do you tell if it's just apple or an apple? Just by context. Now, ancient Greek, they didn't used to have an indefinite article, and this is modern Greek, and they've changed a couple hundred years ago, and now they have an indefinite article, ana, but this is not actually the same as an. This really says one apple. So you can debate whether that's this one apple is the same as an apple. In context, it probably is, but grammatically, that's a good discussion to have. The other thing you notice about these 5 languages here is they all go left to right. Hebrew goes right to left. So there's a lot of conventions that go with languages as well. Okay, here's an apple. Now, if I was describing this apple in English, I would say the apple is red. Auf Deutsch, I would say, der Apfel ist rot. Same thing, the apple's red. In Russian, however, I would say яблоко красное. And you'll notice something. 4 words here, 2 words here. The. Russian doesn't have a definite article, doesn't have a the. And ist the verb to be. We don't need to put a verb to be in here. We just say apple red, and red with a neuter ending on it. Okay, so different languages have different rules, have different grammars, have different structures. And just because we write it one way or the very similar way in 2 languages doesn't mean a third language will have the similar things to it. Okay. And this is another kind of apple. And in English and German, we'd call it a computer, like that. And in Russian, we'd call it a computer, like that. It's probably computer. My accent's not so good. But even though they're the same word, basically in all 3 languages, we use that word differently. It can imply different things. I've been asking, what is this? This is an apple. Now let's go back the other way. What is an apple? Well, you might think that's an apple, but someone else might think this is, or this, or this, or this, or even this, or even, or even a Beatles record. You know, they're Apple records. So, what is this? It's an apple. What is an apple? Could be many different things. When we think about language, we really can break it up into a couple of categories. Etymology, grammar and syntax, semantics. I've talked a little bit about this already. Here's some more specific examples. Well, etymology is the origin of words. Maybe why is computer called the same thing in English, Russian and German? That's because it comes from the same place. It has the same origin. I went to the Solomon Islands for a while. I knew quite a few people from there. They don't grow apples in the Solomon Islands. They do grow guavas, however. So once a Solomon Islander who came over here said to me, "Oh, can I try one of those hard-looking red guavas things?" So he didn't know what it was called, but he gave it a name based on what he already knew. That's really the principle of etymology. In English we say apple, in the Germans say Apfel. Why? Because we're both descended from the Saxon tribes. So 1500 years ago, the Saxons had a word that was similar to apple or Apfel, and we've derived that to be the modern versions there. Grammar and syntax is about the rules of language. Grammar is about words, and syntax is about how words go together. It's like we say an apple. We don't say a apple or a apple. And if we did say a apple, would we say a or a? Okay, so all these kind of rules, that's your grammar. And okay, we say apple with a small a, but if you said Apfel, you'd have to have a large a. So again, that's a grammatical standards, different grammatical rules in different languages. Syntax is how the words go together. So we say apples are tasty. We don't say tasty apples are. I know Yoda does, but normal English speakers don't say tasty apples. Tasty apples are. Okay. Why did I do that on video? Okay, semantics is about the meanings of words. Okay, meanings of words. So you've probably heard the expression, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. What does it have to be an apple? Can you just take some vitamins? Would that be the same? If you ate a guava, or if you ate 2 oranges and a banana, would that be just as good as an apple? That's really the point. It's just a saying, you don't have to eat an apple every day. She's the apple of my eye. Well, I don't have an apple in my eye. I don't look at apples all the day. And if she's the apple of my eye, that's really going to be rather uncomfortable, maybe even painful. So it's just an expression, it's just the way we use the word apple. Okay, that's an overview of some of the ideas in this way of knowing language. Here's a list of the objectives we want to know based on what we've just talked about. Language consists of a system of signs with agreed meanings, although the term signs can be interpreted very broadly to include letters, symbols, sounds, gestures, images, and even objects. Language is a crucial part of our daily lives, but is also filled with potential problem areas, for example, ambiguity, sarcasm, irony, and translation issues. Language plays an important role in communicating knowledge. We are studying theory of knowledge after all. Let's get back to knowledge. Language doesn't just describe our experiences of the world, but may actually structure those experiences. This is something that's been studied by a lot of very smart people for a long time. Some really interesting articles to read about this. And lastly, but pretty importantly, language works together with the other ways of knowing and informs them and is informed by them. Okay, so there's our learning objectives. I would like to wish you good luck and good hunting as you explore the way of knowing that is language. See you later.